Hey everybody, hope everybody's well. Today on the channel I'm going to do a review for the new Megadeth album, simply titled Megadeth. Don't really need to dive too much into the history of the group. You know, they've been around since the early 80s. They've produced some of thrash metal's celebrated albums, you know, with your Rust in Peace, Countdown to Extinction, and my personal favorite, Rest in Peace, just to name a few. And I believe this album is going to see them on their way out in a fairly high, positive manner. All right, now let's get to my very early verdict in how I felt after the few listens initially. Well, first of all, I'm going to say fans of classic Megadeth will find plenty to love here. There's a lot of speed, a lot of technicality, a lot of attitude, and the riffs are coming left and right and would last for days. New listeners may find this a bit of a strong introduction to the band's identity. I maybe wouldn't start with this. I might get them, say, to start with Cryptic Writings, maybe even Countdown to Extinction. But as a final end, it succeeds in being respectful to the past, emotionally resonant in the present day, and it's a confidence way it is going to expand on their legacy. The vocals and lyrics, as usual, are gritty, sharp, and somewhat more aggressive on this album than they have been on the last couple of albums. It's a very emotional in places, especially on the tracks that deal with reflection, conflict, or even the closure of the band. Older fans of the group are going to tell us that Mustaine sounds energized, and I believe that 100%. Even if his voice kind of carries the wear of decades of metal, the roughness is actually being praised as part of this album's authenticity. It works as much as his voice is a lot more gravelly and harsh. It fits this music very well. So as far as the lyrics, we also have nothing really new in the Megadeth canon. We have, dealing with war and conflict, personal reckoning, social decay, corruption, all the stuff that Dave likes to rant on and sing about very passionately. The musicianship on this final and self-titled Megadeth album are being widely praised as one of the strongest elements of the record. The album leans heavily in traditional Megadeth thrash mechanics, fast tempos, intricate guitar interplay, and aggressive rhythmic percussion. The technical performance is top tier, and it's a major reason why the album stands out so high against the rest of the catalog, and is why it stands out as strong as a final statement for the band as well. The album stays loyal to the band's long-established sound, blistering solos, and tight riff structures right from start to end. Where do I think the album stumbles? I'm going to say this without being too harsh, but it really leans too heavily on familiar formulas from the past. Along with the songwriting feels like Megadeth on autopilot. Riffs are basically heard before. I don't think there's anything real different here. Structure-wise, it's the same tension build-up solo chorus pattern as we've seen in the last, if my math is good, 20 plus years. There's little risk of experimentation on this album, as is in pretty much any Megadeth album, unless you go back to, say, Risk, where it completely flopped. But overall, it's solid, but it's not really surprising. Some of the tracks to me feel also kind of underdeveloped. A few things come across like ideas that were never really evolved or really never thought out to the point maybe where they could have been. They have strong riffs or cool moments, but the overall composition doesn't quite land. This creates a mid-album lull where the energy kind of dips. Lyrically, I would have to say it's quite uneven. Mustaine's lyrics have always been hit or miss with me, but there are misses stand out on this album. Sometimes some of the lines feel clunky. Themes seem to repeat them without adding much depth. A few of the choruses really lack the punch or the power that Megadeth is known for. And it's not embarrassing by any means, and I wouldn't say that it is. It's just uninspired. Another issue I have with this album is the production. It's too clean, and I think it plays things too safe. The mix is polished, but maybe too polished. Guitars don't always have the bite that they should. The bass sometimes to me is buried and you don't even know that James is even playing on the song, which is kind of a letdown because I think he's a pretty good bassist from what I've heard. The overall sound feels compressed rather than explosive to my ears. It's competent for sure, but it doesn't grab you by the throat the way that their previous albums should and did. And the biggest thing, and I know this is their last album, so this can be a kind of a take it or leave it kind of a comment, but it doesn't push the band forward. This is the biggest critique I have of the album. The album feels like a victory lap, not a create a lap. For a final chapter, some listeners hope for something bolder or more emotionally resonant, but you're not going to find that here. But in the end, you're going to get a solid Megadeth album that checks all the boxes from the previous albums, most of them, and that's something in itself, and it's not to be ignored. Now, where does this album shine? The guitar work on this album is razor sharp. Teemu Mäntysaari's arrival injects a noticeable spark into the overall group and even Dave's own writing. Solos seem fluid, very technical and energized, which on the last couple albums, that was one of the flaws I had with them. The harmonies and leads have fresh dynamics to them. Even the familiar riffs seem to have new life. And I would say it's the most consistent, exciting guitar playing the band has showcased in years. And I'm thinking, way back to maybe the Marty Friedman days. I mean, Drover was a good guitarist, but he was no Marty Friedman. And I think the band, between those albums, really kind of lost a bit of their appeal as far as a lead guitarist. Another big plus, on this album is that Dave Mustaine's riff writing is still lethal. It's like he's kind of had a rebirth. Even the critics out there say that the album plays it safe, but admits that all the riffs hit hard. They're very tight, muscular thrash rhythms on this album, leaning back towards the old stuff. You do get that classic Megadeth syncopation, and there's a sense of urgency that recalls the earlier days. Another thing that really shines about this album is Dirk Van den Beer's drumming, which I would even have to say he is a secret weapon. His playing is aggressive but very controlled. He's not flashy. It fits and transitions, add momentum and personality to this Megadeth album. The rhythm section feels locked in and powerful, and he gives this album a backbone that keeps even the most predictable songs from imploding on themselves, I would say. But the biggest thing to me about this album is the energy level is high and it's front to back, back to front. It's consistently there, and that's something I've always liked about Megadeth's albums. The energy has just always been so much a part of their sound. Even when the song structures and even when the songs seem, somewhat rehearsed and familiar, the performance is never lazy on this album. There's a sense of purpose too, I also find. Almost like the band knows that this is the final chapter and they want to go out on top. It captures the essence of Megadeth without sounding tired. It doesn't break new ground for sure, but refines what Megadeth is best known for. The speed, the precision, and that final snarl of Mustangs when he's singing. Now, we need to talk about Ride the Lightning now because it's somewhat the elephant in the room. I understand why he decided to cover this track, but at the same time, and the band don't do anything really different with it. It sounds almost note for note with the original Ride the Lightning from Ride the Lightning back in 84, I think it was. And because of that, it's going to get a lot of flack because everybody's going to be so familiar with the original that this isn't going to stand much of a chance to be compared to it that way. I think it's a serviceable cover, if you want to call it that. It's, like I said, I understand why he did it, but at the same time, it could have been done a little bit different. It's slightly faster, and his vocals, I'm going to say this, and I mean this in the most positive way because I like the song, but he sounds like shit lyrically on this. It's not written for his gruffness and stuff, but it's a great song no matter who covers it. And in final, if you're a longtime fan, and even if you're not, this album has delivered exactly what you want. It's It's got your sharp riffs, your technical firepower, even a sense of closure, which I think is a big positive on this album. It doesn't reinvent Megadeth, but I don't think that was the purpose. But it celebrates everything they've always done best, making it a worthy and memorable final statement. And as a final grade of this album, I'm going to give it a B+. I hope in the future, I don't know about maybe a Megadeth reunion, maybe they can do some one-off shows, but I would like to hear new music from Dave Mustaine, even if it's solo stuff. But that remains to be seen, so we'll see what the future brings. And like always, if I do have the physical copy, I'm going to show it. This is the official one from Amazon, and it's got the lenticular cover. I don't know if it's going to make a difference, but anyways, exclusive, that's the word I'm thinking of. There's the back. I'll show you the spine if it shows up. I'll show you the CD here real quick. There's the back of the inlay, the front of the booklet, and the back. And we have lyrics, more lyrics, which my blind dumbass can't read unless I have my glasses on. What happens when you get old, folks? More lyrics. Yes, you guessed it, more lyrics. Shot of the group. More lyrics. And then we have just lots of credits. One last thing I'm going to say is Megadeth has some great album covers, and they've got some not so great covers. This one to me is right up there with one of the best. I think just it looks so fitting for a last album, you know. It makes a lot of sense to my brain, and I hope you like it too. If not, well, no big deal. But anyways, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this album, even the artwork. And we'll see each other soon. Take care as always. Goodbye.